There are moments in life when a person gets caught up in something without even realizing it, and tonight was one of those nights for me. Everything had started out ordinary, but it carried a breaking point within an irreversible night. As I sipped my coffee in the kitchen, I flinched at the notification that popped up on my phone. It was a message from David. "I'm at the office again tonight. Work is really busy. I'll be home tomorrow night." Before I even finished reading the sentence, a mix of warmth and anger spread through me. Why? I had gotten used to these messages by now. Every time he came up with a different excuse, but I knew the truth. There was no us anymore. David's mind and body belonged to someone else. I set my coffee mug down on the counter with a thud. I felt like I couldn't breathe in the kitchen, in this house, in this marriage. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was 43, but I was still beautiful. My tall, slender figure, my still eye-catching curves, my slightly wavy chestnut hair. And yet David's eyes were not on me. At that moment, a burst of laughter from the living room snapped me out of my thoughts. Caleb and Sam, my stepson and his best friend, they had been around a lot lately. Sam worked at his uncle's repair shop during the summers. He was skilled, a little reckless, but undeniably attractive with his strong hands, broad shoulders and effortless confidence. He was the kind of man I would do anything for. When I walked into the living room, Caleb was sprawled on the gaming chair, and Sam had sunk his large frame into the couch. Both of them were glued to the screen, caught up in their competitive fun. For a moment I watched Sam beside Caleb, the faint wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, his sun-kissed arms, his easy smile. He was young, but he was a man, attractive yet unpredictable. I took a deep breath. "I'm going out," I said briefly. Caleb lifted his head slightly and looked at me. "At this hour?" I shrugged. "Yes." As I walked out, I felt Sam's brief glance on me, but I acted like I didn't notice. Something inside me had started stirring, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I started the car and drove toward the city center. The sky had darkened and a mix of restlessness and freedom coursed through me. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but stepping into a bar didn't seem like a bad idea. I wanted to lose myself in the crowd, to forget who I was for a little while. When I entered the bar, it was dimly lit, soft music played in the background, blending with the sound of laughter and conversation. I sat at the bar and ordered a drink. As I took the first sip, I realized that for the first time in a long while, I felt relaxed finding myself here sitting alone, not caring about the night. It was strange, but at the same time I was letting something I had been suppressing come to the surface. After a while, I noticed that the men around me were looking at me. One of them leaned in, smiling as he tried to strike up a conversation. "Are you here alone?" I lifted my gaze to him. He was a good-looking man, well-dressed, confident, but nothing inside me stirred. I smiled but turned my head away, uninterested. Another one tried to approach, but they were all the same, empty, unappealing. After spending a few hours at the bar, I stepped outside and headed toward my car. The cool night breeze brushed against my skin. I got into the car and turned the key to start the engine, but nothing happened. I tried again, still nothing. My car wouldn't start. Cursing under my breath, I pulled out my phone and called Caleb. "The car broke down," I said simply. Caleb's voice sounded sleepy. "Are you serious? Where are you?" I shared my location. "Can you come pick me up?" I heard some movement in the background, then Sam's voice came through. "I got it, Caleb. Go back to sleep." I took a deep breath, knowing that Sam was the one coming stirred something inside me, but I tried to suppress it as I sat in my car waiting. The silence of the night surrounded me, but the real storm would begin when Sam arrived. If this is your first time hearing confessions like this and you want to support us, join my channel, subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, this story will be one of the most exciting ones for you. A few minutes later, headlights appeared at the corner of the road. Sam got out of the car and tapped on my window. When I rolled it down, he raised an eyebrow and looked at me. "I've never seen you like this before," he said with a slight smile. I was drunk. Hearing the teasing yet gentle tone in his voice made me laugh involuntarily. "Is it that surprising?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. Sam shrugged a little. "But it's a nice change." After checking the car, he popped the hood open. "It's just the battery terminals that got disconnected. Looks like the work of some troublemakers. That's why it wouldn't start." I raised my eyebrows. "What about your car? You drove here, didn't you?" Sam smiled nonchalantly. "It's fine. You're drunk. I can't just leave you like this." I'll pick it up tomorrow. We got into the car and started driving. After a few minutes of silence, I turned to him and asked, Sam, were you staying at our place? Did I ruin your night? Sam gave a faint smile, keeping his eyes on the road. On the contrary, seeing you made me feel better. I couldn't sleep anyway, he said. When we arrived home, Sam parked the car and turned to me. Should I make some coffee? I was tired, but his offer warmed something inside me. I nodded. Yeah, that would be nice. As Sam prepared the coffee in the kitchen, he turned to me. Alyssa, why do you look so sad? His question echoed in the quiet kitchen. I lifted my head and looked at him. There was curiosity in his eyes, but also sincerity. He was genuinely asking how I felt. I sighed. My head was still spinning slightly, but something inside me had started to unravel. I don't know, Sam, I said softly. Or maybe I do, but I don't want to say it. Sam placed the coffee cup on the counter, crossed his arms over his chest, and tilted his head slightly as he watched me. Don't do this to yourself, he said gently. It's obvious that something is eating you up inside. I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. It's not just one thing eating me up, Sam. It's a lot of things that build up over time and eventually overflow. I guess tonight was that overflow moment. At that moment, it felt strange to want to tell him so much, but the understanding in his eyes, the warmth in his voice, they pushed me to speak. I took a deep breath, running my fingers through my hair. David doesn't care anymore, I said, and as the words left my lips, a sense of relief washed over me. He doesn't care about me, this house, our marriage. He's been living in another world for a long time, and I feel like I'm just hanging in the void. Sam nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. Is that why you went out tonight? I averted my gaze. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to get lost. To be somewhere where no one knew me, where nothing defined me. Sam remained silent for a few seconds, then gave a small smile. If you want to get lost, maybe what you really need is for someone to find you. At that moment, I felt something inside me unravel, but at the same time I knew I had to suppress it. I shook my head and tried to stand up, but as I lost my balance, Sam quickly reached out and grabbed my arm. Just then the kitchen door opened and Caleb walked in, his eyes heavy with sleep. His hair was messy and he was rubbing his eyes. You're back, he said, yawning. Then he frowned as he looked at me. Alyssa, are you okay? I smiled. I'm fine, Caleb. Just a little drunk, that's all. Caleb furrowed his brows and glanced at Sam, but Sam, with his usual easygoing manner, simply gave a small smile. It's okay, Caleb. I brought her home and she'll be fine when she gets some rest, he said. Caleb sighed and nodded. All right then, Sam. Thanks. I'm going to bed. Good night. Good night, Sam replied. I gave Caleb a small wave and watched as he headed to his room. When I heard the sound of his door locking, I couldn't help but smile. Caleb was always like that, he closed off his space, never letting anyone in. When the room fell silent again, Sam turned to me. Should I take you to your room? He asked, his voice low but firm. As I tried to stand up again, I stumbled and everything happened so fast. I leaned against him and his coffee cup tilted, spilling the hot liquid directly onto his shirt. Ah, damn it, he muttered, pulling at his shirt slightly. I flinched, my eyes instinctively locking onto his now coffee-soaked t-shirt. The fabric clung to his chest, outlining the firm muscles beneath. I knew I should look away, but I couldn't. Sam looked at me with a slight smile. I guess I need to change. I swallowed hard. Come on, there should be something in David's room. We can't go into Caleb's. He locked it as usual, I said, and an unintentional smile crossed my lips. We headed toward the bedroom together. As we walked, Sam placed a hand lightly on my back, steadying me, but that touch made me feel too much. When we entered David's room, I turned on the light softly and opened the closet, pulling out a t-shirt. You can wear this, I said, but my voice came out as little more than a whisper. As Sam took the t-shirt, he leaned toward me slightly, his eyes locked onto mine. The distance between us was dangerously small. A moment of silence, but it was a silence filled with storms raging inside. Sam's hand lightly brushed against my wrist. Alyssa, he said in a low voice. Hearing that voice shattered something inside me because I hadn't heard a voice like that from David in a long time. For so long, I hadn't allowed a man to look at me this way, but now I was here and I couldn't escape Sam's gaze. Sam averted his eyes from me and shook his head slightly. It's nothing, he said, beginning to take off his shirt, but I couldn't suppress the feelings stirring inside me as I watched his body, the strong muscles appearing right before my eyes. I realized I was losing control of something. When Sam moved to put on the t-shirt, a voice inside me told me to stop him, and I listened to that voice. "Stop," I said, my voice soft but firm. Sam froze mid-motion, his hands pressing the t-shirt against his chest as he looked at me. "Why?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight hesitation. Without looking away from him, I took a few steps closer, fueled by the courage of alcohol. I broke free from the chains of emotions I had suppressed for so long. "At the bar tonight," I said, keeping my eyes locked on his. "Many handsome, successful men tried to talk to me. They all tried to get my attention." Sam swallowed but said nothing, he just watched me. I took a deep breath, pushing myself further. "But none of them affected me the way you do, Sam." My words hung in the air. The silence of the room merged with the rhythm of our heartbeats. Sam's breathing had quickened, his eyes flickering away from mine, but at the same time, betraying the battle he was fighting within himself. I held his gaze. "Tell me why." Sam parted his lips as if to speak, then closed them again. He looked like he didn't know what to say, but the look in his eyes told me everything. Finally, he lowered his head slightly, his voice soft but steady. "Because you've been different to me from the very beginning, Alyssa." Something inside me snapped. The space between us had closed so much that I could feel his breath on my face. I didn't know where to put my hands. My mind was clouded, but at the same time I felt clearer than ever. Sam's hand gently touched my cheek. "We shouldn't do this," he said, but his voice wasn't convincing. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of his touch. "But you want to," I whispered, and in that moment Sam let go of all his hesitation. He lowered his head, his lips nearing mine, and finally, without being able to hold back the emotions that had been building up inside me for years, he kissed me. His kiss was gentle at first, careful, but when I didn't pull away, it deepened. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer. When I placed my fingers on his chest, I could feel the rhythm of his heartbeat beneath his muscles. This moment, this feeling, everything about it should have been so wrong, yet it felt so right. We kissed until we were breathless, but this was only the beginning. Sam's breath still lingered on my lips. The air between us was charged, and we had reached a point of no return. But suddenly, Sam pulled back, his eyes locked onto mine as if he were questioning what he had just done. "Caleb," he whispered, his voice filled with concern but also laced with the sparks of desire. I smiled, looking straight at him without even blinking. "In his room," I said, my breath still uneven. "The door is locked. If it opens, we'll hear it." Sam hesitated for a moment, then as if another thought had just crossed his mind, he asked, "David?" I didn't look away as I smiled, shaking my head confidently. "He's not coming home tonight." As I said those words, I felt a strange lightness inside me. It was as if I had just broken the chains of a long-standing captivity. Sam was staring at me, but now his eyes held not hesitation, only surrender. "We can lock the door too," I said, my voice low but carrying a clear invitation. Sam's pupils dilated, his breathing quickened. He paused for a few seconds, then reached out and slowly closed the door. The soft click of the lock echoed through the room, intensifying the tension between us. But when he turned around, his eyes landed on my dress lying on the floor. He lifted his head in surprise, only to find me lying on the bed. His gaze slowly traveled over me, and I could feel the way he held his breath. There was hesitation in his eyes, but also a desire he was struggling to suppress. I didn't move, I just watched him. "What are you going to do, Sam?" I asked, my voice low and deliberate. At that moment, something inside Sam snapped. Without taking his eyes off me, he moved forward slowly with steady steps. He approached the bed, placing his knees on the mattress. As he leaned in closer to my face, his eyes remained locked onto mine. The space between us was almost non-existent. Then, in a hushed and deep voice, he whispered, "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life." His words carved themselves into my heart, spreading a warmth inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time. I wanted to say something, but the words got caught in my throat. Sam leaned in even closer, and in that moment, time stood still. When I least expected it, I found my hands on Sam's back. I was drunk. My senses and cognition were very low, but I was sober enough to feel the enormity of what was inside me. It felt better than I could have imagined. I missed it, and the strangest thing was that I liked it more than I had ever felt before. It could have been the intoxication, it could have been Sam, it could have been his big body. Sam was panting, looking so excited and red. It went on and on and on. At one point my body contracted like crazy. Despite all the alcohol, I made a loud noise. Sam got agitated. I thought I should shut up, so I took one hand off Sam's back and pressed it to my mouth. Sam then closed his eyes. I felt his hands tighten, then his whole body. Finally I said, "Don't be afraid and don't stop." Sam let go completely. I could feel it in Sam's reactions along with the warmth inside me. He lay down beside me as we talked about the beauty of what we had just experienced. Exhaustion took over and we both drifted off to sleep. Time felt as if it had stopped as the night went on. I stirred slightly and opened my eyes. In the dim light of the room I saw Sam sitting at the edge of the bed. He picked up his t-shirt from the floor and hesitated for a moment. I just watched. With quiet, careful movements he turned toward the door. I could guess what was running through his mind. He was making sure there was no risk of getting caught by Caleb or David. It was logical, but this wasn't just about logic. I smiled as Sam silently opened the door and stepped out. I whispered softly after him, "Sam, this wasn't just the alcohol." He paused but didn't turn around. I continued, letting the certainty in my voice be heard. "I'm looking forward to the days ahead. Wait for me." And then the door closed, but I knew this wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. If this is your first time hearing confessions like this and you want to support us, join my channel, subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, this story will be one of the most exciting ones for you.